Alright, so my top 5 most anticipated games of the year is the Blood of Dawnwalker, Phantom Blade Zero, GTA 6, Judas, and 007 First Light in that order. And I've already covered 2 of those games already, the Blood of Dawnwalker and Judas. I'm not going to be covering GTA 6 or 007 First Light. Anyone who wants to know any bit of detail about those games is out there, and it's been put into the spotlight, so it's impossible to avoid. But those other games has been sort of left out of the spotlight, even though people are anticipating them. But just for myself, I wanted to go deeper into like some of the interviews that's been shown or the gameplay showcases and really break it down and to see what the games really are like. And so yeah, that's what I plan to do today. So yeah, buckle up, strap in. Hopefully I don't ramble for too long. Hopefully I get right to the point with these details. Now, the first important thing to note about Phantom Blade Zero is that, at least according to their CEO and game director Soulframe Leong, is that it's not a Souls-like game. He says that they've tried to make this game feel like a unique mixing of genres while still maintaining elements of those more popular genres. Now, he does state that the exploration was inspired from other Souls games, as well as the combat being inspired from games like Ninja Gaiden and Devil May Cry, while the narrative of this game was inspired from older Resident Evil games or Silent Hill games. He also talked about the games that broadly inspired this game, such as like Sifu, Bloodborne, which is actually one of his favorite games, Metal Gear Rising, and just other incredible melee combat games that came out over the past decade. Now keep in mind, just because you're inspired by something doesn't mean that that's going to be all the game is. It's basically a replica of that game that you were inspired by, because what this game actually is a heavily inspired take on those old school Chinese kung fu movies, and it's essentially meant to embody aspects of that very fast-paced sword parry movement system. And before I break that down, as well as the combat in this game, I wanted to talk about the dev team size, which is somewhere around 40 to 50 devs. I couldn't really get a more accurate estimate, but for me, the responsiveness of the feedback on those gameplay showcases makes this situation basically identical with what's happening with Rebel Wolves and the Blood of Dawnwalker, which I already talked about. Because again, at least to me, it instills so much confidence in the player base when devs are confident in their product enough to constantly put the game in front of their audience and ask them, what they think about it and what feedback they might have. Like, to me, this just shows a level of trust that has often been neglected between devs and the communities over the past 5 to 7 years. And it brings a much more positive and productive feedback system because there's just like mutual trust between developer and gamer. To me, it also shows the strength of smaller dev teams, which can move much more faster and they can make changes more rapidly in a smaller time frame. Despite this basically being a AAA game, their response time on feedback has been incredible. Also, here's a little side tangent. I'm going to try to keep this brief, but as much as we talk about studios that just blatantly ignore their player base or they tell them they're wrong for their opinions, we have seen a lot of these like newer-ish studios over the past 2 or 3 years that are doing the exact opposite of that. And it's teams usually with smaller dev size, such as like S-Game, this is the studio behind Phantom Blade Zero, or Sandfall behind Clear Obscure Expedition 33, or Rebel Wolves with the Blood of Dawnwalker. But I'm really just saying this to counter the whole doomer take about how all developers are just corporate money hungry and competent teams, and that's just, it couldn't be further from the truth. So yeah, I don't want to drag this point out for too long, but I think that's just something to think about. Oh, and also, just like the Blood of Dawnwalker, this game has been in development for 4 years since 2022 and is on track to release later this year. To me, that's just another W for AA or indie games that can get these games out within the decade. Also, reportedly, this game is expected to cost somewhere between 200 million and 400 million Chinese yuan, and that's about 28 million to 50 million US dollars. Now, as far as the game itself, we know that Phantom Blade Zero will have 3 difficulty options at launch, and they're going to be very different because they want this game to be as accessible as possible, whether you're a very casual player or a very hardcore gamer. And these modes will be Wayfarer, which is sort of like the game's story mode. For those unfamiliar with fast-paced action games, it's going to be a really easy mode as far as I understand. There's also Game Changer, which is basically just like the standard difficulty mode, which I'm assuming most players who buy this game are just going to play on the standard mode. But there's also a Hellwalker mode, or what they're now calling the Extreme mode, for more seasoned players with fast-paced, action-oriented combat. But something really interesting to note here about the Extreme mode is that it will add restrictions due to New Game Plus for people who are looking for the hardest possible challenge in this game. And it's going to be really cool because they say this is going to function like a PvP mode because of how differently the enemy AI changes. That sounds extremely sick to me. Just imagine if it's like this. After you play on the Extreme mode and you go into New Game Plus, you can't increase your max health at all. Or maybe there's a one hit mode or a one life mode or something like that. I know that sounds really extreme, but I mean, it's called the extreme mode, and they say it's going to basically function like a PvP mode because of how difficult it's going to be. Like, that just sounds so sick, and I can't wait to get into that. Like, this game being as accessible as it is, basically having a story mode and then having a really, really tough extreme mode, like, that just shows all the signs of a team that's basically listening to feedback, and it's also them understanding that all players play in different ways. Oh, also, speaking of New Game Plus, the game's main story is expected to take somewhere between 25 and 30 hours, while also having multiple endings. And I gotta say, I wasn't expecting this. Like, I was expecting the game to take somewhere between maybe 10 to 15 hours, but apparently it's expected to take over double that time. And that's excluding like side content or side activities that you can get into. That's approaching RPG game time. Like, that's actually really impressive for an action game. Now, to get back to the combat of Phantom Blade Zero, it seems to me to have some sort of essence of like Sekiro's parry system, or maybe some sort of combo system that breaks down guards for tougher enemies or bosses. Also, something that I noticed in the gameplay showcases is that there looks to be some really cool looking abilities. Like, there looks to be some sort of, you can throw back projectiles with your blade. There's also this bow and arrow, like triple explosive range attack, it looks like. Also, there's this sort of like boomerang twisted blade attack. I don't know what it is. It's also in God of War, but like, I don't know what it is, but it looks really cool. And perhaps there's a telekinesis ability going off of this gameplay footage, but it also could just be some sort of updraft ability. Either way, this also looks really cool as well. Now, like I said, this is expected to be a very fast-paced, sort of parry-oriented kind of system. But for me, the melee combos look really sick. And like, I hope that we get access to most of them early on, and then we can upgrade those combos later on so that they're, like, maybe the combo duration is extended or we do more damage within the combos. But for the most part, I hope that there's a lot of really cool combos, and it's not just like parry warfare. Now, the weapons in the gameplay showcases I could make out was weapons like the straight blade. I can make out a twin blade, a scythe of some sort, I think. Obviously, a bow and arrow. There's this sort of like blood katana. I think it's a blood katana, at least, with the red slashes. Also, what looks to be a halberd. I can't really tell based off of the gameplay, but like, I'm pretty sure that's a halberd. Also, what looks to be some sort of dagger comboed with another short blade of some sort. In another shot, we see a polearm being used, which is typically one of my go-to weapons. Other than that, that's all I could definitely make out in terms of like the weapons that we saw. It has to be stated though that the weapons obtained from defeated bosses will contain special abilities or attributes, so expect there to be a lot more weapons than we've already been shown. Now, I know that I've mainly been talking about the parry system and the fast-paced combat and the melee weapons, but from the gameplay showcase, it does appear that there's another option and you can approach the combat with stealth. But to me, with a game of like the combat that looks like this, it'll probably take me at least 3 playthroughs before I even try stealth in any serious capacity. It's not to say that it looks bad or like they probably made it a tacked on system, but like, as of right now, as it stands, the very aggression based melee combat, it just looks too fun. And I don't want to start slowing down and playing stealthy. Like, it'll take me quite some time before I really want to play in that kind of style, because I will want to play with as many weapons and as many abilities as possible before I start switching it up and playing different playstyles. But yeah, that's all I really had to go over in terms of like the combat of Phantom Blade Zero. In terms of like the story, like, I really don't feel confident enough to go into a deep dive of the meaning of Wuxia, which they said this game is based on. They talk about this in detail, but like, to me, it just goes right over my head. I'm gonna be honest. All I can really say is that we play as Soul, who is the main character. I mean, the CEO's name is Soulframe Leon. He might be a self-insert for this game, but I mean, if he is, he seems like a pretty badass dude, so I'm not gonna lie. You know, I ain't tripping about that. But it seems to center around the aspect of finding self-worth for Soul. And it's because he's been used as a tool about half his life for the Order. I'm not sure what the Order is, but he's been used as a tool for the Order to wage war. So it's him like trying to find self-worth and trying to do good and be good for the people around him. So I'm not really too sure about the story much more than that. So yeah, I'm gonna just leave it there. I will, however, be talking about the setting, and the setting seems to be striving for this like sort of kung fu punk. It's like a mix between the Chinese themes and like the cyberpunk theme. Now, I have to be honest, a game setting is not really one of the things I put too much weight into. Like, a game and its combat being really fun, or its story being really interesting or intriguing, like, I tend to care about that kind of stuff a lot more, if I'm being honest. But still, like, the immersion is always something that I really like about my games, and things that contribute to stuff like that is a really good soundtrack with really good ambiance in the background, also amazing environmental detail, which at times can tell a story in itself, and also a really interesting setting that can instantly captivate players. But yeah, other than that, that's all we have to talk about in terms of Phantom Blade Zero, with the combat and the themes and the accessibility and the art style. Like, it all looks great. Like, if this game doesn't at least get a 9 out of 10 from IGN, I'm sorry, IGN is just the biggest frauds on the planet. I don't know why they keep getting this access and they keep giving games that look absolutely incredible like 6 out of 10s, and they keep giving these dog shit live service games like 8+ out of 10. I'm not understanding it. I'm not really sure why they decided to single out IGN when a lot of these gaming journalist companies decide to do this, where they'll see the exact same trailer that we see, this so super cinematic, where we're like, there's no way this game's real. Then they show off actual gameplay from a showcase, and it's actually like the real game, and it just looks genuinely insane. It's like, we hope that they can just pull this off, and a lot of these newer studios, they end up actually pulling it off. But for some reason, that gives these game journalist companies just a hate boner for some reason. Like, I don't understand it. Phantom Blade Zero, to a lot of people, it looked like a fake game. Again, like Crimson Desert, it looked like a fake game. And I'm just hoping that it actually does live up to the hype. And honestly, you know what? I am expecting it to live up to the hype. Like, it is good to be skeptical. Like, it's not good to try to overhype stuff or go into it with unrealistic expectations. But like, it comes to a certain point with these Eastern studios where like, you gotta just admit that they have some of the best looking games coming out. And 9 out of 10 times, a lot of them end up living up to the hype. And I hope that Phantom Blade Zero does this as well, and it ends up being one of those games. Like, they've only shown off impressive stuff. Again, they've shown gameplay showcases and cinematic trailers and story trailers and stuff like that. This only shown impressive stuff. They've done dev interviews that's given me a lot to be optimistic about. Like, I'm not going to try to find stuff to poke holes into or start overanalyzing stuff. It looks impressive. It looks really good. Everything looks really good, and I hope it ends up paying off at the end of the year. But yeah, other than that, as always, let me know what y'all think about Phantom Blade Zero in the comments below. Once again, another game that ends up giving us the Crimson Desert vibe. There's no way this game is real. There's ain't no way they actually made a game that looks this impressive. No way. The melee combat looks too fluid, too smooth. There's just no way. I have a feeling there is a way, and I have a feeling that they actually did pull it off, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, anyways, that's it for me. I'll see you next time.